Ryan, I am very excited to talk to you about this show. It's one of my favorite shows. And I'm interested in knowing, first off, in the changes from season 1 to season 2, obviously there was some creative changes as well. Miguel Sapochnik also left the team. And do you think that there was a big shift in that departure when it came to approaching storytelling this season, or do you think it's mainly maintained the same?
No, I mean, the storytelling always sat with us as the writers. I have a wonderful team, and Sarah Hess and I co-wrote the show together. Certainly, Miguel was involved in the creative process, but he was really more there as the filmmaker of the show to bring it to life visually. And he did great stuff for the show, and certainly, was a major part of it. But I think the success of season 1 meant that we had established something. We found a bunch of things that were working, and we were able to approach season 2 with confidence behind us that we knew what we were doing, and I think we went in looking to improve the things we can improve, and then do more of the stuff that we thought was working well from season 1. And I think we got there in the end.
Yeah, I definitely think you did. So jumping into this first episode that we see, something that really surprised me is seeing the relationship between Alicent and Kristen Cole sort of, I guess, move from what was probably subtext to overt text. I'm curious if you can sort of divulge when this relationship made that change, because it feels like they're very comfortable with each other, but I believe it's only been a few days since the end of the of season 1, so just curious about that.
Are they comfortable with each other? It feels very awkward. They're literally talking about the weather. So that's the thing. I think it's a brand new relationship. We don't specifically get intentionally into when and where it started. I think part of that is the fun of leaving it up to interpretation by the viewing audience. But it's certainly a new thing, a new romance. And the idea is that these two characters have this very kind of stunted emotional development, particularly in the world of intimacy with a partner. Cole, because he's been a canned man his entire life, as an Order of the Kingsguard, and his past sort of sins with Rhaenyra and wearing that like a millstone around his neck. On Alicent's side, she was married off at 14 years old to a guy that was 20 plus years her senior. She doesn't really have certainly she was physically intimate with Lucerys, but I don't know that they had a romantically intimate or emotionally intimate experience, just because of the huge age gap between them. So it's led us to this place where you see these two characters who don't experience a lot of pleasure experiencing great pleasure together in a nice way that I think makes the audience go, oh, okay, these are two humans enjoying themselves, but they don't have the emotional know-how and modeling for how to exist in something like that, particularly something they have to keep a secret.
I'm curious, going into season 2, looking at Rhaenyra as a character, I found it really interesting seeing first in season 1, of course, when these characters switch over during the time jump, that a lot of Rhaenyra's sort of more intense and chaotic aspects seem to have been tempered a bit, and I think we see that still in the first episode. Can you speak to that and how you guys have sort of created Rhaenyra and how she's, as a leader, she's trying to probably emulate her father more than anyone else?
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. Is that Rhaenyra's entire existence, now that the crown has been put on her head, is trying to sublimate her more kind of punk rock and rebellious instincts that we saw when she was a teenager, when she was played by Millie, and trying to emulate her father, knowing that her father chose her so that she would rule and model in the way that he trained her to throughout her life and would have wanted her to. But what Rhaenyra is realizing, if not in this first episode, she will realize it, and the time has come. In the Viserys' approach is maybe fine in a time of peace, but in a time of war, you can't be a good and just person all the time and still be an effective ruler. And that's the thing that Rhaenyra is going to bump up against again and again this season. And what makes that interesting is we know that she has this underlayer of kind of rebelliousness and a unwillingness to fall in line with the expected order of the day.
You've mentioned it before in some other interviews that Daemon exists, and I've seen evidence of that. But I'm curious, when it comes to characters like that and, characters like, I guess, like Nettles and all of these important characters who sometimes might need to be consolidated, what is your approach when it comes to looking at the show and seeing which characters that might have been important in the book but maybe need to be sort of added together to like, sort of have a more succinct story?
Look, it's an adaptation, and it's a challenging one because it's a history book. And there is a narrative there, but it's not a traditional narrative the way you would find in a novel like the Song of Ice and Fire stories were. So I think there's always a challenge in screenwriters, bringing a text to life on the screen. And I think you just have to take it on a case by case basis, sort of like what story we're trying to tell, what characters are necessary in that story, who helps us move this tale forward. I think the other thing you'll find generally in our rendition of Fire and Blood, that being House of the Dragon, is that we've really hewed to the idea that this is a story about this very complicated family, and a lot of the POV characters that you will find us following are members of the family. And I think the character, and there's certainly exceptions, Kristen Cole, things like that, but even he in a way is a member of this family, having been adopted by both sides of it over the course of the years that have passed. But you only have so much screen time to tell the story, and I think we always go back to, okay, well, who's the member of the Targaryen family that we're following in this particular storyline, and how does this impact them and the larger tale of this war for succession that we're following.
That's intense, and I can't wait to see the rest of this season. I want to thank you for speaking with me. And just one last little question. Okay. Are we going to see Rhaenyra and Daemon be happy at any point in this season? Because I feel like I've had my heart torn out a little bit watching some of these episodes.
I mean, that remains to be seen. I've said before, like, the great tradition of Game of Thrones, the narrative in the sort of larger, A Song of Ice and Fire universe is that you build characters up who have these deeply complex relations with one another, and then the forces of politics and war drive them apart, and they go to different places. And then sometimes those circumstances bring them back together, having evolved and changed over time in interesting ways. And Rhaenyra and Daemon sit at the center of this narrative as much as Alicent and Rhaenyra do. And I doubt that we have seen the last of them together.
Diplomatic answer that gives me very little, but thank you very much for speaking with me.